Derek Westerlund. I don't know if you were here last night, Derek, but I was kind of the highlight for me this year at Coast Film Fest was being in the hot tub and having. You had Todd Jones from TGR. Yeah. Can we get a chair for Richie? Come on, he's worth it.
Tall one, tall chair.
I want to be close to Derek. Oldest? Who's oldest?
Hans.
Hans, how old are you? You won't say.
35.
35? In Swiss German years, maybe. No. So Richie Schley, Hans Ray, Cam Zink, Derek Westerlund, the man behind Free Ride Entertainment, and so many films over the years. Thank you, by the way, for just continuing to inspire and deliver so many works of mountain biking art. So.
Well, thank you, Pat.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
How about
it's cool to be here, see some old friends.
Where does this one sit when you talk about all the early days where you broke away and you said, okay, I can make a name for myself and I can do this. What's more gratifying, those kind of raw early days?
I mean, like Cam said, like this is probably number one in a sense that so much emotion, so like many doubters. No support to think big in the industry anymore. So it was cool to accomplish it. Took a lot of years, a lot of heartache, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. And finishing it was, it felt like a huge chapter almost closing.
Yeah. I mean, everyone was always asking for the story to be told. But with that comes a big responsibility, right?
Yeah, I mean, you need to separate your personal feelings, your thoughts around it at some points. You need to, try to include people's ideologies of their versions of it. The film turned out completely different than I ever expected. Like, we left probably $500,000 on the cutting room floor of amazing scenes and great stories that just didn't make it because the film was too long. It could have been like, could have been Killers of the Flower Moon, 3.5 hours, 4 hours by the end. But yeah, it was, and that was sacrificial. Like, to leave so much great stuff and so many great people sort of left out of it was tough.
Yeah. Richie, I know you've been friends with Derek for many, many years. How old were you guys when you actually even knew each other? Was it BMX or post?
Yeah, we started at the Kamloops BMX track in British Columbia, and was.
At what age? Just give us a little context.
I guess we're probably like 12, 13 years old, and we kind of had this BMX journey together, and then I think we kind of parted ways a little bit, and then we both had this hunger for being a ski bum and searching out the mountains and powder, and we came back together and skied together and both mountain biked together, and then this whole free ride BC movement started, and we kind of collided at this one moment, which is another movie called The Moment, but that's another story, and then our journey just kept going, and we're still, duking it out in the trenches and with each other and riding bikes and skiing powder, and it's awesome.
I love it when you guys get at it. They've got this creative but a slightly abrasive relationship sometimes. They're not afraid to, no punches are pulled for sure. Hans, how about, when we talk about early days of mountain biking, you go way back. You've watched the sport grow, and I know there's always a lot of conversation of like what was first or who was first. But in your perspective, when you look at this story, do you love how it's told and the kind of the how it cycles through?
Oh boy. Uh-oh.
Hey, ever since the bike was invented, people were riding in the dirt, and even when the guys in Marin County invented mountain biking, people before that were riding in the dirt, but they invented a sport or a bicycle that was specific for riding in the mountains, and that was the mountain bike, and with that a sport was born. And then ever since then, the sport turned a little bit into racing when it really boomed in the early 80s, and it was all early 90s. The sport boomed, and it was about racing, Lycra stopwatches, and a very few people would like try to push the limits, but that started to happen with more and more people, and some of them were literally here in the Laguna Canyon, the Rats. They were known for riding steeper stuff than anybody, hiking up these trails, and that's where a lot of this started. That was like years before the word free ride was even coined. You know, we used to call it extreme mountain biking. I was, and Richie was too, and I am sure you guys were inspired by the extreme skiers who would do the steep stuff. So I think the story is told beautiful, and there's like really good examples in there of everything, and you know, it's just been fun to take this journey, and we all had the same spirit, and that's, you know, pushing the limits a bit further than before.
The Rads might beat me up outside when I leave tonight, but
Let's all get along.
I try to get along with everybody. But for me, Hans was the original free rider because, and it talks about it in the movie, he was the first adventurist on a mountain bike, someone that was taking his skills to places all over the world that then, we're looking at generations right here. We're looking at, Richie being one of the OG true free riders, and the difference is that, even maybe somebody who were riding certain trails or steeps beforehand, but these guys took it to a level that popularized it, made it possible, and then bred people like this gentleman here who is an inspiration to kids, all of us, all the time. Like like what the level, the where mountain biking's been taken by people like Cam has surpassed anything we ever thought was possible. And every year I go to Rampage and I'm like, can it get any radder? Can it go any further? And it does.
It does. I mean, we were just talking about this earlier. Every time you go to Rampage, you're watching someone build a line. You're like, that's not possible. And then the day before the event, they're guinea pigging it. I remember, Cam. I remember the Canyon Gap. I remember when you overshot that, and I was with Sten Kramer, and I'm like, I think I just watched someone take a fall like Tarek. It was horrific. It's about a 70-foot canyon gap, and you overshot, went over the bars, landed on, and then you're up the next day walking around. I mean, that's the kind of level, I guess, what you're talking about. It's on such a...
Why'd you have to push it so far? You're making me look bad.
All that ignorance, I guess.
Cam, can I ask you, can you reflect back on maybe some early inspirations when you, like, looking at these guys and gaining inspiration from the likes of Hans and Richie?
Well, I wasn't joking when I said ignorance. Like, I was an ignorant little shit, and I was a racer, and I was like, I'm 15 and I'm better than all these dudes ahead of me, and that was the drive, I guess. We have better skill, we could do whatever they're doing, give me a shot. I'm this little kid, and that just kind of carried me through to where someone did give me a shot, and it just, all right, now you show and prove it, right? But there's no denying, especially with hindsight and perspective, of seeing like what they laid the tracks for us, and that maybe it took the ignorance and I don't know, just the tenacity of a teenager to just try to build off of it and ignore the injuries, ignore the risk, or even if you aren't ignoring them, you're still willing to overcome them more than some guys that are washed up. Like, the irony of it is, like, I thought they were all too old, but they did some of the stuff that Richie's done. Like, you take some young Groms up there nowadays, and they're like, oh, this is gnarly. I've seen. And I was like, yeah, Richie did it like 20 years ago, bro. So even when he was doing stuff that if I would have seen it in person, that's a huge kicker, right? You have something on TV, and if you already have a preconceived notion that they are like a has-been or something, that's going to stick with you. Just like a lot of things you see in other sports. But I personally would just try to take my racing pedigree and the skills I learned on a bike and look for freestyle motocross, snowboarding, surfing, and all these other sports to try to elevate it in whatever direction and have the opportunity to be able to shape it and mold it, and it's a huge responsibility, but like something I was just super stoked to have the opportunity to be able to make my mark on it and steer the ship at least a little bit in the direction that I dreamt up.
Can I ask you three favorite points of the film, like a moment that you?
Well,
Yeah.
for me personally, I don't want to reveal too much, but our friend ended up paralyzed, and we got him on a bike again, and it was very emotional, and it was, I can't even speak to it. You'll see it.
Hans?
I think it's just a cool mixture of showing all the subcultures of the sport, from adventure to big mountain to slope style to all, the free ride is not just one thing, it has a lot of subcultures, and it kind of shows all that. And to the point what you just said about what Richie and some of the people did like 20 years ago, and also imagine the bikes, how they were 20 years ago with V-brakes and little tires and like no suspension even in the early days. So the sport has come a long way, and I think the film shows the evolution of it quite well.
Cam, how about you? When you're watching the film, you're a big part of it, but is there?
I mean, it took me back to stuff that I just kind of forgot, and thinking about how bad of a dude Hans was, right? And I was like, I used to sit around watching Pacific Blue with my family because that was one of the only mainstream things with bikes as a kid. So like Hans actually helped shape my like motivation as a Grom when I didn't even realize it. And then it takes some like, oh yeah, that was Hans. And like, thanks for the motivation, But as far as the most captivating moments, man, definitely the injuries, right? And then no one likes a comeback story, or more than like, I don't know, the people that have actually came back from big injuries. So I can greatly appreciate everything that Tarek went through, and feel lucky to not be in that position and just watch, know him as a friend and know the hardships, but then to see him prevail is about as good as it gets, right?
There's this saying that Greg Stump would always, the filmmaker Greg Stump would say that people within the sports are the accidental, or the filmmakers are the accidental historians of the sport. Do you feel a little bit like, of all the projects that you've done in storytelling, do you feel like you're getting to put a little stamp on history, and it's a little bit more indelible with this project?
Sure hope so.
Yeah, I mean, we did a lot in our careers. We changed the sport. We shifted it. We created these events like, Crankworks and Rampage that have become like these, larger than life events, put mountain biking on the map. I've always remained pretty, I don't know. I think when I got nominated to the Mountain Bike Hall of Fame, thanks to these guys here, I realized what we actually did. I don't think I ever thought about it before. And when I realized that we actually changed a sport, like, people changed surfing or skateboarding or whatever it was, I think it all hit. And then this movie became that much more important. And so, there's people that will argue that, so-and-so did this, or these people started this, or this person was better than this person, or, it's a weird one because there is a lot of politics to it, even amongst friendships and through that storytelling. Like, we could have made a original series, probably a 6-part series, and we probably should have, to give everybody the due justice. But, I think the film is yet to really, get out to the masses, and when it does, I think it's evergreen, and I think people will appreciate it.
And can I ask last question of, what are you hoping when people see this film that they leave with?
I just, there was a certain amount that I felt like this movie had to keep its core credibility, so that people that never knew a thing about mountain biking would appreciate the stories, and then people that rode at the highest level would appreciate the stories. And that's all I really cared about. I cared about it being credible. And there have been people that feel like it's two-sided to our crew or our friends or our tight-knit network of people, but I beg to differ, because there's a lot of people that make impact, but I think everybody that really changed the game is are recognized here.
Well, I know everyone's excited. You guys excited for this film?
Can I make
I can't believe Troy Lee hasn't watched this film.
Yeah.
Hey, buddy.
Okay.
I want to make a little shout out to this surf community that has come, my friends, to support us and our scene, because there is an underbelly of this town that is mountain biking, and we appreciate you being here. We love it. Thank you.
Underbelly.
I also want to give a shout out here. My old friend Paul Hengstebeck is here. He's 83 years old. He filmed.
Paul.
He recorded the whole history of mountain biking in Laguna. He did all my early projects. He filmed all the old rats footage. He has footage in your film. You probably don't know it, but in the old footage you see early on. So anyway, Paul is here somewhere, and shout out to him.
Hans gave me the footage. Send him a check or a bill or something.
Are we going to have a licensing issue here? No.
Exactly.
Okay, round of applause, you guys.
Thank you all.
Nothing's for free. Thank you, guys.